Alright, welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we're gonna look at how to create a custom component and custom parameters in this component. So you have these controls to be able to control the inside of your component. So we do that using a base and use customizing the component and binding to create these sliders and buttons here. So it's rather simple. So we just have a circle coming in and then just an output here going to a null, and in here we just have some different noises to create this grainy effect. So this is really something that you can just use then to put at the end of your network to just give your artwork, whatever you're doing, this kind of grainy vintage look. And of course you can use any kind of network in there. Feel free to expand this as well. And alright, let's just dive in and see how this works. So I'm just gonna delete this. And now we just have like a circle here. I just have a circle with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 with a slight softness and a radius 0.1 and 0.1, and the background color is black. So I'm just going to connect these and add a null in here again. This is also just a null here with the display turned on. Okay, so this null is just here so we can easily create a base. So I can now just right click anywhere and say collapse selected, and now it instantly creates this base that we can work with. So I'm going to call this base grain of X, and if we dive in here we can now see we have an in, a null, and an out. Like the in and out are just created automatically, and the null is what we had in our network first. So I'm going to delete that, so we're not actually going to need it. I'm going to drag these all the way left and right, and we're going to add a lot of stuff now in here. So before we actually create the parameters and everything, we need to, or it makes sense to create the insides of this network first. Alright, so we're going to work with 3 different noises. I'm going to add one here and go to the comment page, because we want to change the resolution of it. We want that to always be the same as the input here, because if you look at the circle, as you can see, it's 1920 by 1080 as I said. So this resolution is going in here and it's just being taken here as well. So if we middle mouse click, we can see it's 1920 by 1080 as well. So we want to use that, so we can just easily do that by typing NOP in one. So just kind of talking to this operator, and then .width. And we can just copy this and paste it here, and then type .height. So now we're just using whatever resolution this in top has. Alright, cool. So we've got that. Got that going. We can now just copy and paste this 2 times. We're gonna use 3 different noises here, as I said. And we want to use one noise for the color, one noise for a big grain, and one noise for a small grain. Alright, so let's add a composite here. And let's copy paste that 2 times and just put that here and here, and put this there instead and this there instead. So we just have this chain of composites going on here, and then what we want to do is add a switch top here and put that in there, because what we can do now, I'm actually gonna put all of these in. Whoops, let's change all of these operations to add. You can change these and adjust these later if you want to. So let's just put all of these noises in there. So if this is kind of massive noises, and now as you can see here, if I just change the index of the switch, where like, I'm gonna turn the display on here as well, we can just easily switch this like a power on off thing. So I'm gonna leave this on because it looks so beautiful. I'm gonna bypass these two for now. Alright, so I want the first one to be the color. So I want this to be quite the big period. So kind of like this, and I want this to have no harmonics, or just like, yeah, no harmonics for now. And I want this to animate very slightly, so I'm gonna type in abs time dot seconds times 0.05. Right, so it's like very slowly shifting now there in the background. I'm also going to change the seeds on here, just so they definitely don't look the same. And I'm gonna add a lookup here to be in control of the color. And the ramp, put that in there. I want this the black one here to have no alpha, so we can see the background, what's going on there. And I want this to be like an orangey kind of color, and this one to be like a reddish kind of color. So something like this. Really feel free to use your own colors. So this is kind of just this film. Is it called film? I think so. Like these old photograph kind of errors, like, you know, lighting errors. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's called that way. Whatever, you get the idea. So that's our first thing here. Second one is what I call big grain. Let's turn down the period on this quite low, and turn the exponent up a bit, so we have this kind of not very pretty looking pattern. And now we can add a function here and change this input to input whatever this sign is called, exponent, and then change this to 15. Alright, so we have now like more of a grain going on, maybe want less harmonics. I want this to be a bit bigger. And now with the exponent you can kind of control how much you can see of them. So kind of like this. I'm not sure how much you can actually see of this in the compression of YouTube, but if you do this yourself you can see it well. Alright, we also want a level in here, so we're more in control of how much we're actually seeing of this. And let's go to the third noise. Let's unbypass this and change this to random. And I also want to insert a level here and change this opacity here to like 0.2. Alright, so now we have color, big grain and small grain added. So now we can kind of like see what these look without the others. Alright, to be able to easily switch on and off the color, I am going to add another switch here, and use the in as a second input and switch these around. So now we have like if this is set to 0, we're just using using the in, whatever is coming in, and if we turn this to 1, change this to 1, we're using the composited root here. Same thing here with the main switch. So here we're just using the input, and here we're using our little adventure. Okay, I think that's it for the network. Let's now actually get to the part where we create the custom parameters. Okay, so to do that, we can either zoom out and right click here, say customize component, or go to the parameters. But I want to be working in here, so I can like this is the parent called GrainFX, and these are all the children. So this is the parent here as well, so I can right click on here and say customize component, so we're doing the same thing, and also right click and say parameters. So if I zoom out and click on here, these are the same. This is exactly the same thing. So just we can here now see it as a window. I'm gonna minimize it though. We're gonna add like another tab here, down here, in a second. Okay, so let's now actually think before we do, what do we actually need to create? We want to create a button that's switching between on and off, so like kind of like bypass button. We want to have a button, we want to have 3 sections. One section is for the color noise, one is for the big grain, and one is for the small grain. And for the first one, we want to have the option to turn this on and off. And we want to be able to create, to change the period on this. Okay, so, or any other thing, you can obviously mess around with that yourself. But let's look at that. Okay, so let's first create the page. So the page is like this is a page, like one tab is one page. So let's create a page called controls. Click on that page, and it's not going to appear here unless we have parameters in there. So let's add a first parameter, which is going to be a toggle, and let's call this power. And click add parameter, and now you can see the controls is being created, and can also see we have a power button here. It's not doing anything yet, we're gonna get to that later. Okay, so cool. Let's add another toggle or another button which with which we can turn this on and off, like the color. So let's call this color on off and add this, and you can see it's being added there. You can also turn on the section, so now it's clear we're in a different section here. So we're now dealing with the color. Now I want to add a couple of floats. So floats are basically sliders with decimals. So I want to be able to control the periods, so I can just type in color period here and add that. And now we can define ranges here. So I want this to be between like 2 and 5, and I want this to be default set to 4. So I can just type 4 there, 2 here, and 5 here. And now you can see it's set to 4, and I can go between 2 and 5. Pretty straightforward. Okay, now we want to add another section where we control this. Maybe we want to control the exponent here between like 2 and 3. So, or before that, actually, let's be able to control the opacity here. So, all right, let's add another parameter and call this big grain opacity and add that. Let's make this another section, so it's clear now that we're working with a different sort of noise in this case. And this is actually fine to just be between 0 and 1. And let's also add a big grain exponent here. Alright, add that as well. We want this to be between 2 and 3. And I'm gonna add make the default to 0.5. Okay, and let's go to the third section. We just want to control the opacity of this. So I want this to be between 0.1 and 0.3. Actually 0 and 3. 0.3. So let's call this just grain opacity and add it. Make this as another section because we're again dealing with another noise. and change the range min to like 0 and 0.3 and make the default 0.2. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it for the setup. But we can't actually control anything with this. So let's close this and just work with this now. So what we can do is just right click on here, say copy parameter, and go to our main switch and right click here and say past bind. Because I'm using the bind when I'm changing this, this is also changing, like our button here is also changing. If I just reference this, if I change this, then I can just do that. Just pass the reference instead. If I change this now, the connection is lost and we're not changing this. So let's keep this as a bind and you can kind of control both ways. Let's also copy this parameter and do the same thing with the switch, past bind. So now I can turn the color on and off. Also, I need this to be on. I also want to be able to create to control the period here, so I just copy the parameter and passed the bind here. I'm gonna copy the parameter of the big grain opacity and put that in here. Past bind. So I can change this now. Same here, copy parameter, and put that in here, pass bind, same with this. Okay, so two things. Let's actually open the customized component here again. I noticed that the opacity of this, so big grain opacity, is default set to 0. I want this to be at 1 default. And there's one thing I want to do. I want to be able to animate this. So like kind of like this grain is doing its thing there in the background. So I'm going to type in abs_time.seconds times 0.5 here. And now we can see this is animating. Might even want to, I don't know, whatever. So there's two ways I can do this now. One being that I can just, I'm going to create a animation speed parameter first. So I'm going to just call this animation speed and add this underneath the exponent. You can also drag and drop these around here, so you can rearrange them if you want to. But I don't want this to be a toggle. I want this to be a float. I could have also just changed this here, actually. Okay, anyways, I want this to be between 0 and 1. This is okay. So I'm just gonna close this again. There's two ways, as I said, to go about this. We can either just copy the parameter and pass the reference here, and now say abs_time.seconds times this. So now if I drag this up, you can see it's going faster or slower. So we're just multiplying abs_time.seconds by this parameter. The thing is, we don't have it binded yet, binded now. So there's another way to generally go about this stuff. Let's use a constant. I think there's also parameter. I haven't actually tried that. Oh yeah. Well, that's an easy way to do this actually as well. So we can, if you use the parameter chop, we now have all of these in here. So now I could select, or in here actually you can now just select animation speed and use that instead. It's actually not an easier way, I just noticed, but this is definitely a way you can like pick these. Actually, let's see what I wanted to try. So you can put a constant in here. Call this animation speed, and copy the parameter and pass the bind here. So now we can change that here, and now we could yeah, use this chop instead. So I could type op no 1, and then animation speed. Oops, forgot these. So and now if I'm in here, I can control these both ways. So there's many ways to go about this. If you really want this to be bound, then you could go this route. You could yeah, you could use the parameter chop if you wanted to have all of these just between 0 and 1, and then you wanted to maybe map them here, and then you use that. I think this is like of the binding is pretty much the fastest, and yeah, I think it's the best route to go. But there, yeah, as always in TouchDesigner, there's many ways to do some, like, to achieve your goal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If we zoom out now, we have all these controls here, and we can just adjust these. Not sure how much you can actually see of this due to compression, but anyways. All right, so now you have the option to just create your folders under my components and add stuff in there. Obviously, as I said in the beginning, you can use any kind of thing in there. I also made a pixel sorting component where I can like create like control kind of stuff there. Maybe just show you that. So as you can see, if I add a, I don't know what the problem is here now. Oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, as you can see, I can now change this stuff here. Maybe you can figure that out by yourself, how you can do that. You can see what parameters I have here, and you have the the tutorial. That's what it's called. And you can just rebuild that on your own, but I can integrate that onto the file for my patrons, and then you have that as well. All right, so I hope this all made sense, and that this is useful for you. A huge thanks to all the patrons, all the lovely people supporting me. It's insane how much support I get now. It's I'm very, very grateful, and I'll keep working on the beginners course these days. I can't really talk anymore. Anyways, hope you're well, and see you soon.